Hey guys, so it's 1 in the morning as I record this and I'm really tired. So this video is a bit rambly because I just wanted to get it out there. I'm sorry if it's not the same level of content you're used to. So on Friday afternoon, I was enjoying my day off up in London, finally taking a break from dealing with YouTube and Doctor Who. Naturally, this meant the biggest Doctor Who news of the last few years had to drop. Indeed, in case you've been living under a rock, former Doctor Who showrunner Russell T Davies has been announced as the successor to the wildly controversial showrunner Chris Chibnall. Davies was responsible for resurrecting the show after a nearly 16-year absence from television, which meant his era of the show became an iconic cornerstone of many people's childhoods. It's safe to say the return of Davies has taken the internet by storm, with many fans celebrating the return of the beloved writer and expressing hope that Doctor Who will once again reach the heights it did during his original era. It's also safe to say I like to praise the first Russell T Davies era. Fresh off reviewing every episode, you'd think I'd be ecstatic and ready for more quote-unquote tongue baths. But it might surprise you to find out I'm not. Whilst I've never been shy of criticising the Chibnall era, I'm actually very concerned about bringing Davies back, not because of the writer himself, but of the precedent his return sets, and the possible ramifications it's bound to have down the line. I know I'm not the first to express doubt, and I'm late to making a video about the big news, but I thought I'd give it some time to mellow so I could talk about it all without the nostalgia goggles. So here's what I really think about Russell T Davies returning to Doctor Who. One of the biggest reasons this appointment may have happened is purely for PR purposes. At this point in time, Doctor Who is barely talked about by the mainstream audiences. Ever since Moffat took over, the majority of the general public simply dismissed the show as not being good like it was between 2005 and 2010. But even though audience numbers were dropping significantly during the Capaldi era, it's safe to say the general consensus of the Chibnall era is that it's terrible. Ask someone on the street what they think about Doctor Who and they'll probably say something along the lines of, "Is it even still a thing? It was ruined by that woman." Or, "That Chibnall guy sucks." With ever decreasing publicity from the BBC itself, Doctor Who has been rapidly fading from the public consciousness. It's quite telling that a 5-hour long critique of the Chibnall era has more views than the official Series 13 trailer and anything uploaded on the Doctor Who channel since the Series 12 trailer on November 23rd, 2019. So imagine being a BBC bigwig. You have a crisis meeting about what to do after Whittaker and Chibnall leave. Change the Doctor back to a man? No, people will still complain. So what if we bring back the showrunner the entire nation loves? It's a genius PR move, suddenly bringing Doctor Who back to the forefront of public consciousness, with former fans suddenly talking about the show again. I've had friends and family blowing up my phone about this, despite them not caring a bit about the show in years. Within one day, it feels like Doctor Who has already become a public institution again, a show everyone knows. There's a sudden optimism that it will be good again, because Davies had revolutionised the show back in 2005, achieving pretty much this exact same reversal of mainstream perceptions of Doctor Who. But this also brings up the biggest problem. Sure, it's a genius PR move, but it's a beyond cowardly decision by the BBC. By bringing back Davies, they have essentially admitted that nobody else can make the show succeed. It'd be like bringing Sir Alex Ferguson back to manage Manchester United. Sure, it's a great short-term fix to get things back on track, but that's just it. Short term. They're basically saying that only Davies is capable of making Doctor Who good, which means we'll face this exact same problem when he leaves for a second time. Maybe they'll be the perfect successor contributing episodes like we had with Moffat, but if that successor can't hit the ground running, it's likely the whole show gets canned. Appointing Russell T Davies again is like the last throw of the dice. It represents a complete lack of faith in the brand to stand on its own. And we've already seen how this kind of decision making has played out, with the 10th Doctor completely overshadowing the 13th Doctor era in expanded media. The return of Davies is like the second in the 1-2 punch of this reliance on nostalgia. The way the BBC seem to approach the show right now is with the stance that nobody cares unless Davies and or Tennant is involved in some form. To go the full Monty and reappoint Davies is all the proof you need of that. As much as I love Davies and I can't blame him for returning to his favourite show, I think it might do more harm than good. It's almost like going back to an ex out of desperation. Sure, the connection is still there, but you're constantly comparing the relationship to how it was before. It reminds me of all these attempts to recapture the magic of Alien and Terminator by bringing back the original writers or directors. But when you look at how those turned out, is it worth it? The BBC might just be setting themselves up to fail, ironically suffocating themselves with their own safety blanket. So now that he's back, what can we expect from the RTD2? As we all know, the first Davies era was a very campy and grounded period of the show. He took a really domestic approach to everything. Your mileage may vary on this, but it's hard to deny he crafted a very unique and recognisable era. There was a tightness to it all that matured along with the audience, capturing the magic middle ground of appealing to all ages. He characterised the Doctor as a very angsty yet plucky and witty character. The Time War backstory gave him grit and darkness, but there was still a lot of comedy there, which most people tend to remember. You knew what you were getting, and there's definitely a lot to love in those original 60 episodes. But that's part of the looming question for the future. Will we simply get more of the same? Doctor Who is now in a unique position almost no show has ever been in before. Is Davies just going to do what worked the first time around, if he even has a choice? Since the overwhelming opinion from the BBC seems to be that this original Davies era is the only thing people care about, I'm honestly concerned this might end up being a carbon copy, a greatest hits of sorts. You see it all the time with bands. Sometimes they'll reform and create brand new material, evolving their styles and experimenting, but sometimes they'll stick to what made them famous despite not being able to pull those songs off in the same way anymore. A moody, angsty Doctor depressed about Gallifrey being destroyed is the last thing we need for a Davies return, because it's simply been done before, by Davies himself. Is it worth trying to emulate masterpieces like Midnight when there's no way to capture that lightning in a bottle for the second time? If anything, bringing Davies back might devalue his original era and make public opinion turn against it, since people will be more willing to point out the obvious flaws in the way they do for every current showrunner. See how people during the Moffat era were pointing at the flaws of his Davies era episodes, and how people like myself love to point out all the glaring issues of pre-showrunner Chibnall. By pointing a previously beloved showrunner, you're opening up that legacy to be ruined by either the new content itself or the always toxic fan reaction, which again makes me feel like it's a desperate short-term fix, not really thinking about the long term. But I feel like we have to give Davies some credit here. He's not an amateur one-hit wonder. After he left Doctor Who, he created award-winning dramas like It's a Sin and Years. These are vastly different to his Doctor Who work, so it's clear he is a genuinely good writer and showrunner in different genres and can handle a wide array of stories. You can even claim he's matured as a writer, which I do think is the case. I personally don't think he would want to retread his greatest hits, because he has an opportunity to do something new with Doctor Who he hadn't done yet. It's obvious that even after handing in his resignation, he would still have had a million ideas about what he wanted to do with the show. Doctor Who is so infinite and creative that you can never truly be out of ideas. With Davies' improved maturity as a writer and his well-established ambition, I do think he's going to take things in a much different direction. Maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part, but I trust him to give us brand new ideas and storylines, continuing the experimental style he implemented during his first run. Maybe we'll see a lot of Ood and constant Dalek invasions of Earth, but I'm hopeful that similarities will be few and far between. If he can avoid falling into nostalgia, I feel like the show can actually move forward, and at the end of the day, that's what's important. Regardless of whether the RTD2 era is actually good or not, it absolutely has to move the show forward to sustain its success in the long run, rather than being a flash-in-the-pan temporary return to relevance. We can't allow the show to be locked into a loop of preaching to the choir, because that would kill it as soon as Davies leaves. You can even see it with how Chibnall tried leaning into Davies era nostalgia. If Davies takes risks and evolves the show, then it has much better chance of survival in the long run. But much like anything with Doctor Who, we'll just have to wait and see about that. There's a lot to unpack with the announcement that Russell T Davies is returning to Doctor Who. We have confirmation he'll begin with the 60th anniversary special, which makes sense due to how impossible an introduction that would be for a new showrunner. It also makes you wonder whether we'll get the return of spin-offs or companion shows like Doctor Who Confidential. I'm interested in seeing just how much backing the BBC give Davies, since he might have a lot of experimental ideas going against the typical grain. It'll also be interesting to see how many writers and directors he brings back compared to what new talent he brings in, since I think that might be the biggest indicator of whether the show is moving forwards or backwards. Right now it's too early to tell, but I will point out the announcement has already overshadowed the impending Series 13. Even though people wanted to find out who the new showrunner was, the majority of online Doctor Who fans were more concerned with getting a Series 13 release date or a proper trailer. But now everyone has completely forgotten about those. Rather than marketing the next series, the BBC is already looking ahead, which kind of devalues the content to come in the next year and a half as Chibnall and Jodie leave. Right now, we're on a knife's edge. Bringing back Russell T Davies could single-handedly rescue or destroy the show. but I don't think some fans are right to blame him for the issue. The problem stems from the BBC having so little faith left in the show that they would resort to something so desperate and borderline cowardly. I wouldn't think Davies would take the job offer lightly if he knew there were better choices out there. Doctor Who is simply not very marketable anymore, so this injection of attention is important. It's just worrying if the BBC only care about that short-term nostalgic attention. I don't think appointing Davies on its own is signalling the end of Doctor Who, but it definitely makes me feel like this is a very risky, nostalgia-based throw of the dice that might definitely come back to hurt the show and the property as a whole. But hey, at least I'm truly excited about new Doctor Who for the first time in a very long time, and it'll be fascinating to see where exactly the show goes from here, as long as they don't make David Tennant the 14th Doctor, because that would just completely kill the show. So let me know what you think about this news in the comments below, and thanks for watching. And I'd like to give an extra special thank you to my Platinum level patron Fallon Cortez, and all my Gold level patrons Alex Marston, Calvin, Daniel Shillito, Francois aka Line Vortex, George, Herna Verzog, Mega Man 0781 and Stefan Evan Miller. Thank you so much for your support.